Love this podcast? Support this show through the supporter feature from Acast. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description to support now.
Viewers so far, we're rolling. Thanks for coming in, brother. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Mike Britton's my guest, elected first term, well, as some of the media would call you, a junior councillor. City of St. Catharines. Elected in St. George's Ward. First time around, too, eh?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's 8 people running that time. It was the most contested ward in the city.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you were a Rick Dykstra ticket guy? No?
No. You know what? I didn't really know Rick that much at that point, I'll be honest. But I got to know him once I was on city council.
Yeah.
So...
I thought he had a ticket pretty much, and he had a whole bunch of guys that he seemed to be supporting, and so you're saying that what, you didn't have an affiliation? He didn't give you a helping hand? Because it seemed like everyone that it was associated with him got picked up, got elected, except for maybe Joe and Port Dalhousie there. Okay, let's just make sure. Okay, so we're good.
Sounding good.
Looks good. Well, looks like a couple of long, lanky, awkward-looking dudes playing pretend DJ. So anyway, I'm Jim Fannon. Welcome to the Jim Fannon Show. This is the new edition of the Jim Fannon Show. We are backing it up with another copy here, so we'll get some good audio. But forgive me, Facebook peeps out there. It's just the microphone off the phone going, so that's all you guys get. But we'll upload it to YouTube, to the Jim Fannon Show page. You can find us on Twitter at Jim Fannon Show, at Jim Fannon, on every podcast platform basically that's out there, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, all that kind of stuff. So, and if you want to interact with the show, we're kind of watching the live feed here, so we'll take your comments and questions. If you have some, you can just chime in on the live Facebook feed, and then catch us later on the podcast if you want to check the audio. So, Mike Britton's my guest, as introduced already, first-term councillor in St. Catharines. Mike, yeah, why don't you just start out by telling us a little bit about, like, who you are, what you kind of believe in, what kind of guy you are, and I'm more interested in, like, if I'm hanging with Mike Britton, what personality type do I have? What are my morals look like? What's important to you as far as friends go when you're hanging out in their basement, like we were talking about?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be honest. We talked a little bit before we turned on the camera about being a 24/7 counselor or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's a thing. And most of my days are like long, full of council days. You know, there isn't a lot of that.
You're treating this like a full-time job,
pretty much, yeah. And you know, my other side gig is kind of very flexible, so I can spend more time on council. But as far as like hanging out in a basement watching hockey, that's usually what we're doing.
Right.
I'll go over to some friend's house, watch some hockey. You know, they'll be drinking. I'll be drinking water.
You don't drink?
No. But I just want to clarify.
I'm always skeptical of. The kind of one's in that glass as usual. I'm always skeptical of people that don't do drugs or drink. They always like makes me go, whoa, what's wrong with you? What do you mean? You got a problem?
Yeah. I think it started because I was cheap in high school. I was like, how are you getting money for this expensive alcohol? My word. But and then I was just like, well, I can't break the streak now. It's been, you know.
Right.
But
never drank, never tasted it?
No, never got it.
Never had a desire to. Well, good for you. Many people struggle with it. So, and are you a coffee drinker?
I recently kind of got into it.
I kind of fallen back too after 25 years of abstinence from that evil drug, but that's a drug too. So we'll get you on that.
Yeah.
He uses coffee relentlessly. He's an addict.
Mike Britton, coffee user.
So on City Council, I'm just going to help you introduce yourself here. Chair of the Economic Sustainability Committee, Vice Chair of the Budget Committee. That must be interesting. We can talk a little bit about that. Niagara District Airport Commission, Niagara Regional Transportation Steering Committee, and Chair of the 2017 Youth Forum Planning Committee. Outside council, you manage properties. That should be a pretty good gig. There's not too many people in Niagara property managing, I don't think. Habitat for Humanity salvage team. Central Community Church volunteer. I know that because I've seen you around quite a bit there. Junior Chamber, JCI, Junior Chamber International member, and Toastmasters member. Wow. So how many speeches you got under your belt at Toasties?
I kind of just joined a few months ago, so I've done 2. I did 2 right in a row.
You did your icebreaker?
I did my icebreaker, which was
fun. And it's like a 5-minute about like who's Bill here. There's my first one. Mike Britton, Mike Britton, not Bill. Hey, Bill Britton, if you're watching.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Should have worn a name tag.
Yeah. So you got the icebreaker done, and then what was your second one?
The second one, I actually talked about, sorry, I'm just trying to think. So I did my Scottish trip. I did a tour around Scotland a few years ago.
Okay.
I talked about that, but I actually think that was in my icebreaker.
Yeah.
I did it on Freemasonry. That's what it was. My second one was on Freemasonry.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you a Freemason?
I am, yeah.
Wow. I don't know anything about that. I'm kind of surprised.
Well, then I won't bore you with it. But, my
it's just another cult, right? Basically.
I wouldn't call it a cult. But, it's a brotherhood. But I love history. Part of the introduction that you skipped there was that I have a degree in classical studies, ancient Greece and Rome. And so I love history. And there's a lot of tradition. There's a lot of history to that. The oldest fraternity in the world. Not fraternity as in like frat house partying, but brotherhood. And so my grandfather was a Mason. My great-grandfather was a Mason. So I figured I really wanted to get involved.
Cool.
And I've only been one. I actually went in maybe a week before I got on council. So it was really a life-changing week. I turned 24.
Okay. That was my first election too.
Yeah, I turned 24. I got elected at city council, and I became a Mason all in period of 2 weeks.
Wow. So like a rebirth. So again, let's get back to, I'll let you just introduce yourself and your personality type and what makes you tick. And tell us about who Mike Britton is. Well,
you're probably not going to like this answer, but a lot of what I do is politics. A lot of what I do is politics, getting out there. And
that doesn't offend me at all.
In the community,
I can't look away. I cannot look away, man.
Yeah, a lot of my personality is that what you see, out in the community, going to events, the committees, that I'm sitting on. That's a lot of what I'm doing, and I enjoy it. That's the thing, is I like what I do, so I don't mind that it's almost all encompassing.
Right.
So, yeah.
So then if you're just to put bullet points, let's say we're doing a dating profile. Maybe I can help you with that. You're talking about yesterday how you're still single. Women, you don't want to be that way. So, I wrote not a dating profile because I'm scared to be seen online even. I remember I was single many years ago. I jumped on Plenty of Fish or whatever, which is probably the bottom feeding of the dating sites. I don't know.
I've never tried.
So I jumped on. I made this profile, and which was hilarious. I had the best time writing this profile, and I think I switched it over. It's my About Me now on my Facebook, which is probably about 5 years old.
That's
because
it
still talks about
recycling of something.
Just it talks about my mother and whatever when she was still alive and stuff like that. So I had the greatest time running that. And then my babysitter, one of my babysitters from when I used to live on Two's Place in St. Catharines, I was probably, we moved there in grade 4. So Sue sends me a message, I didn't ever expect to see you out here. I'm like, delete account right away.
You didn't like the babysitter thing?
The stigma. No, I love the babysitter thing, but the stigmatism that goes along with the online dating, so I never did it. But anyways, I have a habit of sidetracking myself. So yeah, just give me your bullet points. I am, if you're just going to say Christian, I am pro-life, I am political. I finished that.
I don't know if I put those things on a dating profile.
No. But just so for our listeners, because I like this format from the standpoint that one, we don't have to check our watch and go, and then listen to a sponsor. Also, I can talk shit about the sponsors and not fear retribution from the higher ups.
I was going to say you've never had any experience with that.
In the corp. Yeah, I got a little experience with that, and so I like this format because one, I think that local media has had a little problem lately with objective local issue coverage, and you can't do any of this type of thing in the paper. I mean, you're getting to know someone like this just is impossible in print, and then when it compares to terrestrial radio, you get a break every 9 minutes, long commercials. That flow gets broken up. So we got a whole lot of time to go in depth. So I don't mind if you just take the time to wind out, and I think it will help the electorate, which is important to you if you're running next time, or even just people that are interested in following politics, maybe not even in St. Catharines, want to see what St. Catharines are up to or what Mike Britton stands for. Yeah. Then we have a chance to go get really personal here and talk about whatever we want in depth. So that's kind of why I'm doing this, and it's a form of self-expression, obviously, for me too. But I'm a political addict. I'm trying to heal myself.
Don't do that. Come join us, Jim.
You know what? It really takes away from paying the bills for me, right? Yeah. So I'm not selling houses when I'm sitting with Mike Britton for 2 hours in my makeshift studio down here.
I don't mind if you do a few, shots to the camera.
Ricochet's getting one all the time because I love their water and I just give them free plugs all the time. So thank you, Ricochet Water. You changed my life. I never drank RO again. Just spend a little bit, more going in depth about who you are and what's important to you.
Well, so I'll actually tell you a story. We started off talking a little bit about Rick Dykstra, and I've got a story about him, and I got a story that actually involves you. Okay. I've never told you this story, but it's kind of an interesting one. So in 2006, I was in high school. I was actually in civics class.
C-Chord?
C-Chord. I was a C-Chordian. Yeah, I was in all the plays.
I got a strong connection with the C-Chord kids.
Yeah, I was in the plays. I have no musical talent, but I was there.
Okay, yeah.
But anyway, so I was in civics class in 2006, and as part of civics class, there was the federal election going on that year.
Right.
And we were all assigned a political party that year. And I was assigned to the Liberal Party in my class. And out of the groups, we were to elect a leader from amongst us, right? So I actually became leader of the Liberal Party in my grade 10 civics class.
Oh, okay.
And each of the leaders were able to go meet their candidate because the candidates were coming to my high school for a debate. Now, a lot of the names in the 2006 election are quite familiar even still today. So we had the incumbent Liberal, which was Walt Lestuka, so that was who I got to meet. There was the conservative Rick Dykstra running for the first time federally. There was the NDP, Jeff Birch was the NDP candidate.
NDP, Birch.
And there was a Green candidate guy.
That guy was awesome.
Jim Fannon or something like that. So, that's just actually kind of my first exposure to politics in general. And we all got to go to the staff room and meet your candidate. And I can't remember if Walt Lestuka was late or I don't know what happened, but I ended up talking with Rick Dykstra. It was the very first time I ever met Rick.
Wow.
It was in 2006.
Okay.
I was 16 years old.
Uh-huh.
And I chatted with him, and I'll be honest, I was quite impressed, and especially when we got into the debate, because this Green Party guy, he kept bringing up legalization of marijuana all the time. And so the kids went nuts, right?
Well, I know how to play to the kids.
Exactly.
But it's one of our best policies.
Yeah,
if I could say our, like I'm still at the party.
But I'm pretty sure I'm actually pretty sure you won the student vote that year.
I did.
Yeah, you did.
One of the few things I've ever won in politics ever.
So there, you're elected at C-Chord.
I was elected at C-Chord.
Anyway, so what I was actually impressed about Rick, not a shot at you, but he was, the students were not impressed that he wasn't for the legalization of marijuana, but he stuck to his principles. He was like this is what I believe, this is what my party believes, and he stuck to it, even though it was not popular in that school, that was for sure. And I was quite impressed by that.
Is that what made you conservative, or do you think you already had conservative values?
To be honest, I was 16. I didn't have any political values at that point. I was not involved in any way. I think it had an impression on me. I think that the whole debate, the whole experience, the whole watching of that got me involved in
give you a little bit of a hunger for it,
exactly.
Or even tweaked an interest in you that you didn't know you had.
Yeah, before that, I'll say I was not involved.
Family political?
Not at all. Not at all. They used to be liberal, and they flipped conservative. They're not, out there, campaigning or anything like that. Right. So no political background in my family.
My parents wouldn't even tell each other who they voted for. That's how private they were with their political stance. And I often joke, but don't joke. I think if we're that way with our religion a little bit more, used to be intensely private with my religion. I'm a little bit more open about it now because I have so much fun assisting at church, running the cameras and doing video director. But yeah, my parents wouldn't even tell each other who they voted for, which I found was strange. And but some people take that stuff very seriously. And I remember one time we came home, there was an election sign on my lawn. On our lawn, and my dad went nuts. Maybe it wasn't the party he wanted, or maybe it didn't matter, but he was not pleased. He's like, "You didn't put that thing on my lawn, no way!" And we took it down right quick. So, different strokes, obviously, but it's funny to hear you say, at 16 years old, you're like, boom, this is the first guy I talked to, and I always wonder. I mean. We've talked, and thanks to Andy Petrowski and Tony Quirk and the previous musicians that have come on, Jihad Yahia and MJ Blake and all my boys that have come on the show, who've constantly talked about this personality type that is different. It's almost like a different hardwiring of the brain. Obviously, we know men and women are different. You can't say that publicly now, or you lose your job, basically, if you say.
Actually, quick side tangent. I was doing a tour of a new laboratory at Brock University. And it was the neuromechanics lab. They do things, various studyings of different diseases and things like that. And one guy was doing his thesis right now on the differences in men and women's brain, like physiological differences. And I actually asked him, I took him aside. I held up the whole tour. I took him aside and I just said, "Are you getting any political kind of pushback on this?" And he actually said no. I was really surprised to hear that, but he said in the scientific community, it's just accepted, you can see them, here are the physiological differences. And I was like, really? And he goes, we do have to be very careful though in our language, talking about the difference between gender and sex.
I'm struggling with the difference of that. Can you explain the difference between gender and sex?
I'm not an expert on this, so I don't know enough to speak authoritatively, but he just said, we have to be careful in our language, but when the facts say, there's differences between the brains, because his specific research is showing that the firing of the I'm losing my words here, the neurons are actually different rates for men and women, and that affects muscle growth, and that affects muscle usage and things like that. And so that's where he's studying right now.
And that made an impact on you somehow?
Well, this was just 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
It was very recent, so it was just.
What did you take away from that? Just that it was interesting that somebody was even doing a study into it.
Yeah.
I mean, because the Google memo was, all the craze. It was all up in the media forever. Well, except locally, we haven't seemed to talk about it at all. But I mean, I read that Google memo, and it's too bad that whoever it was, Gawker or whoever first broke the story. Put the title anti-diversity memo. It wasn't an anti-diversity memo at all. It was talking about the lack of diversity in STEM, science, technology, what is it, whatever it is, mathematics. And I couldn't disagree with any of it. I mean, we're just hardwired differently. And, but saying that right now, I mean, it's pretty obvious men are stronger than women, after puberty, when the testosterone jolt kicks in. And then that fires a whole different chain of events down, we probably aren't as fearful as for our safety as women are, right? That makes sense. Why? Because the world is a more dangerous place for women, both physically and then when you add sexually into it too. The repercussions and the impacts of unwanted sexual encounter, let's say, are vastly greater for a woman because obviously pregnancy is an issue. Men can walk away with it; they don't have that issue. And in today's, even in a rich country like what we live in today, single mother pregnancies, that's not a good way to start your life. So anyway, I'm
as
going
a 6'4"
down a road.
guy, I never had to really worry about that.
Right.
And it's
so it makes sense that if the world is a more fearful place for women, then they're going to have a different way of looking at it. And I don't think that's incorrect or improper or
To be honest, I think that like that having a different way of looking at it might not be that we're wired different. That might be just practical, right? You have to have a different way of looking at it, right?
Yeah, definitely. But then I'm always interested too about the way the left and right have this different personality type, and I don't know if it's a wiring in the brain so much as it is maybe a conditioning. But no, I think this stuff is biological. I think you're born with it, and conservatives tend to think a certain way about certain things. They like their borders. They like, and I mean borders as far as, theoretical borders, but then functional borders too, like immigration. Conservatives are usually tight on it. They want immigration tightened up. Whereas the liberals think outside the box. They don't have borders. They're freewheeling, the free spirits, and then functionally when it comes to immigration, they're like, nah, let them all in. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, the thing I've been struggling with a lot lately is this alt-feminism hating on men and forgetting that we got here together and that we need each other to move forward. I mean, women are the most important part of the human race. They give birth. Yeah. Hello? I mean, obviously you can't do it without us, but...
It's why most cultures, back in the day, usually had a matriarch, usually had a mother goddess.
Right.
The female was the most important part of
And
societies.
You know what? We're not really going to figure out what this whole bringing women into politics in the workforce, because it's only been, 30, 40, how many years since, women have gotten their freedom. And I'm not opposed to giving them freedom because, economic prosperity is directly correlated to these freedoms. Yeah. So like we want them to live and be happy. And it's funny when you say, back in the day when we rolled in tribes and even after that, I think I remember hearing Camille Paglia. I don't know if you know her, but she's a brilliant, rapid speaking feminist, and I still consider myself a feminist, but I'm really frustrated with this new age of feminism that is really man-blaming. And Paglia was talking about, she's Italian, or both her parents came straight from Italy, and she remembers as a child, and she's about 70 years old now, that the women would take the laundry up the hill to the riverbed or the spring or what have you to wash the clothes, and there was always 10 or 15 of them, and they rolled in their own tribe. There's no men, and that the elders actually held power. The elders were the ones that knew about childbirth and knew about giving birth and about nurturing your child, and all this generational information was handed down, so that they had true elders, and that they were the happiest people around because they often finished other women's sentences. They were very intimate with each other, and singing and whistling all the way while they're doing basically like chores. And men had their own chores, but that the structure all broke down, and now you see that the elders don't hold the power in the groups anymore. They're actually more outcast than they are accepted with the wisdom and all that kind of thing. So I thought that was...
And what culture was this?
Well, she's Italian, but I think it's pretty much the same in any culture where, we are tribal beings. We are aggressive, violent creatures as humans, especially men. And I think that's okay to say, men have a violent, aggressive nature. They need to protect their families. There's a whole bunch of things. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, we're different. We're better at different things. And the same with the races. I mean, you've got different races that are better at doing different things. Why is that racist to say that Asians have a proclivity to math or science or what have you? Black people are better at whatever, or white people are better at whatever. What we're going to do is start going to instituting quotas. We're going to start going into, oh, no, there's too many female nurses here. We need men. No, we don't need diversity at all costs. We're not equal. We're not equal between the races or between the sexes. But
I haven't seen, like, you're talking about, this culture as a better at math or whatever the case may be. I haven't seen any scientific evidence on that one. Like, I just haven't. I know you can say anecdotal evidence or whatever the case may be. As far as as I said, the men and women thing, I just learned about a paper. I also have a medical science degree. That's my other degree at university. And like, I've looked into this. And so, yeah, like I can say physiologically here the difference between men and women. That makes sense. There are some differences, twitch muscles, you know, in black people and things like that. So again, there are some physiological differences that you can point to, but I try not to speak in broad strokes unless there's the evidence, right?
Well, in this day and age, those broad strokes will get you in trouble with the politically correct police, and that's a powerful left-wing lobby right now. And we'll talk about integrity commissioners and the tools of the left right now. I mean, I'm ashamed of the left right now. I'm a left-leaning guy, but what they're pulling off with some of these, invasions of freedom of speech and stuff like that, it's really, it's got me really concerned that we're going down the wrong way.
So then you talked a little bit, and it's an interesting theory out there that, you know, the left and right is actually biological, and that, you know, it's hardwired into you. You just said you're a left-leaning guy, and then I've watched your past interviews with, Petrowski and Quirk, and you're saying that, you know, you tend to be maybe switching a little bit. How do you kind of, if it's hardwired, then how do you explain you?
Well, I think that I'm open, and I took the Big 5 personality test, Knowing Yourself. I think it's Jordan Peterson's site. It's like $10.
Is that?
It's 100 questions.
Jordan Peterson, that's the guy, the professor with the pronouns.
Yeah, I think he's one of the most brilliant men.
I just watched. I really haven't watched too much of him, but just last week, a friend recommended me his podcast with Joe Rogan. Oh, him and Joe Rogan sat down for like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, a couple times.
Yeah,
he was on with Bert Weinstein, who was at that place in the States there where they were saying they were having a day where they didn't want the white teachers to show up, and they were kind of saying don't show up to work, and he's like, well, no, that's racist. You know, it's racist, like not even in reverse. You know what I mean? So, anyways, I ran through this test. It's 100 questions, and then it shows you what your tendencies are as far as the Big 5 personality traits, which is openness to experience. Openness is what I said about the borders. They're freewheeling. They're the left-leaning people. They're the a little bit socialism. Like, I have a healthy respect for a little bit of socialism in our society. I think we need it, and without it, you know, the conservatives are like, no, every man for himself and less government, no welfare and stuff like that. And that's actually that falls under conscientiousness.
Well, so just
different.
One of the books that I have right now, just beside my bed, actually, is a book called Tommy Douglas Speaks, and it's a compilation of a lot of Tommy Douglas speeches all through his career. And for those who don't know, Tommy Douglas being the NDP premier was it
the father of Medicare?
Yeah, like he invented Medicare. Like, he invented our universal access. Yeah. And so I don't think anyone in today's Canadian culture would say that's a bad thing. Very few of us, right? We're proud. We tell people around the world we have universal health care, and we brag about it. And it's thanks to this NDP, premier. And I think if you're left-leaning, right-leaning right now, you're still in favor of it. I guess there has been some conversations though about privatization on some cases.
Well,
but
it seems more
it's
effective,
a very
right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Quicker access, sometimes better quality.
Yeah, but I would say that's become part of our culture, the universal health care, and it's a very socialistic idea, and it's a great one.
Right. So, yeah, I'd encourage you to go by and take the personality test. I think it's knowingyourself.com. I'm sorry, you can Google Jordan Peterson, but he's bright. But no, it's a shame, actually, because I've been called snowflake. Like snowflake, and I'm leaning more right. You know, when I start agreeing with a Ben Shapiro who's pro-life, who's an Orthodox Jew, which I don't even understand that religion. I didn't grow up with anyone that was close to me that was that religion. But when I start agreeing with the likes of Ben Shapiro, and basically where it falls in line to the free speech, and he was brave enough to stand up and say, you're born a boy or a girl. There's not 75 different sex that you can be born. So, putting a U on a passport, because I think somewhere in Canada, I think in BC right now, they just put on a driver's license or something unknown for sex.
Did you hear?
I don't get that, man. And so for him to say, you know what, you can go through hormone replacement treatment. You can install different sexual parts into your body if you want, and I'm fine. Do whatever you want. Like, I'm not,
kind of sound libertarian.
Love whoever you want, do whatever you want, but that doesn't make you the opposite sex. Even if you change your parts, and even if you take all these hormones that are from the opposite sex, you're still a boy. And I was like, what? No! And now we've got these 75 different genders. Someone wrote a thesis paper on that he identifies with hippopotamuses. I don't get that. Like, you're born a boy or a girl. And then it really frustrated me when Bill C-16 came out because of the freedom of speech implications. And I don't think we'll actually see the full ramifications of that for many years down the road, if any. But I'm fearful that this mandatory use of made-up pronouns is just the thin edge of the wedge. These are not popular things to say right now. And then so the Liberals were so frustrated, and I talked to, I think it was Quirk a little bit about this. The Liberals trot out a 10-year-old biological boy who identifies as a girl at 10, and they were talking about forcing him into a female puberty with estrogen. And I thought to myself, This is fucked up, man. This is child abuse, and I know I'll have the haters, and I've been called everything now because of it, of my take on, no, you're a boy or a girl, and if you want to change your sex, well, change your parts and stuff, and you don't feel like you're. I can't even imagine having a disassociation with my sexual identity. I can't, because I'm a boy. I've always liked girls, and I can't imagine how painful that must be to look down and go, no, I don't identify with that. In fact, I identify with the opposite. And so, but they trotted out this kid named Charlie. And when I heard that Charlie was going to be forced into a female puberty, I mean, you can't even get a freaking tattoo until you're 18. And I don't understand it. So I'm not saying, and this is for the family to decide, and I wasn't there or anything. And maybe this kid absolutely, is sure that he was born the wrong sex. But to have him and the family make that decision before he's even hit his natural puberty as a boy, it struck me the wrong way, and it left me feeling like that's scary stuff, man.
It's, again, like I always like to go back, what do the facts and evidence say? What do the scientific community say? Maybe it's just because that was my first training.
That doesn't help
science.
you any here.
No, but
because people are always saying, well, you don't understand because the parents and the kid know best,
Well, yeah, you're right. I guess from speaking to people, it may not help, but to actually look at the facts and evidence, you can see that your brain isn't fully developed until
25.
20s. Yeah, in your 20s. And so that's one of the arguments against if we're legalizing marijuana, where do you put it? Because it can affect your brain development. So that's just one of the topics that I've heard in the marijuana legalization discussion is what age do you put the legalization? Because there again has been studies that it can affect brain development if you take it while you're 14 or something like that. And so in this case that you're talking about, like the child's brain has not fully developed, right? Like he hasn't gone through that.
And specifically, I think it's the frontal cortex that is responsible for impact and consequence. And that's why we do so many crazy things in our 20s before that frontal cortex is fully developed, because we don't give a shit what happens. Yeah. That part of our brain isn't fully developed to the point that we can understand the impact. And I heard it being compared the other day improperly, I think, to being drunk. Drunks will actually reason out the impact and just say, fuck it, I don't care.
Yeah.
Whereas in your youth, and I mean, this is probably different with different sexes and different people. That is just not there. So it makes sense to say, well, no, you have to be the age of majority or 18 years old to get a tattoo, but this is permanent. It's not even permanent. It's ink on your skin.
Yeah.
But then we're saying, okay, well, if you feel like a girl today, then you can be a girl today. But if you feel like any of these other different genders over here, there's 75 of them. What? And then you got to call me my specific pronoun, and this is where I got turned on to Peterson or introduced to Peterson on the Rogan show because he said, "You're not going to make me use number one. You're not going to make my speech compel me to say certain things. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's against the law. That's something you can't say. You can't, and I don't know why we needed a law for this, but you can't deny the Holocaust." Okay, all right, that makes sense. The Holocaust happened. It was a horrible, horrible thing perpetuated by sane human beings just like you and me. You know, Hitler wasn't just a crazy, he was saying he was a human being just like us. But then to flip it around,
artist vegetarian, actually.
Yeah. But to flip it around and say that you must say this, I think is horribly dangerous. And a speaker, I've just been on a deep dive for this because I'm an information junkie. When Ms. came to the forefront, and I'm not even sure this is a women's lib issue more than it was a functional issue. In the English language, there is no, what do you call the Ms. and Mr.? What are those? I can't remember what those.
Like the Fulford, master of the house?
Yeah, no, it's just what they call it. It's not a pronoun, or is it? But
just like a title? Or
we had master for young boys. We have Miss for young unmarried girls, and then Mrs. for married girls, and Mr. But we didn't have a word for the unmarried adult female. Right. So, and it kind of did come in through the back door, I think, with the women's lib who were saying, no, we don't want to be referred to as someone's husband. We want a Ms. But that was more a function of language that was failing us. It didn't, in English language, we don't have male and female for doctor. You're just doctor. Yeah. You're not Mrs. Doctor or Mr. Doctor. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that was, I think, a function of the failing of, a descriptor that wasn't available. So so Ms. came in, and it was accepted because it was accepted by everyone because it was, yeah. But saying that I identify with a stuffed animal sexually or my gender or my biological, I'm a Teddy Rumpkin, and you'll call me kin instead of him, makes me horribly afraid that someone's going to come before the Human Rights Tribunal, similar to your integrity commissioner, and just decide that you're a homophobic, hateful bigot, and that you owe someone a large chunk of cash. And if you don't pay that large chunk of cash, you go to jail. So if I use the improper pronoun on a rental application, or you rent my house and I call you her because you look like a girl to me, but you've already told me that you want to be referred to as Z, now I'm discriminating again. So I mean, this has been a long road, and so I've been tweaked by it a little bit, and then Jordan Peterson came on Rogan for this exact issue. So he's a hate-filled, xenophobic, homophobic, bigot, racist. This is what he's been called. And now, if I take any of those ways of being or those thoughts that you're born male or female, there's really not much you can do about it afterwards, no. You're a snowflake, you're a racist, intolerant bigot, and I'm getting it all too. So, and he's getting it as far as intolerance all the way around. And it's funny, man. I reached out. I was, struggling the other day, and I reached out to a friend of mine who's a left-leaning gay man and said, hey, I think we need to get coffee.
Yeah, help me out here.
Yeah, because I'm struggling with my right-leaning views on this specific issue, because normally I'm tolerant. And you know what my tolerant gay friend said to me? Yeah. Fuck you, basically. Yeah, wow. You hang around. You think it's okay to hang around with the Andy Petrowskis? Andy's not my friend. I've never even had a beer with Andy. Yeah. I talk to Andy about politics sometimes. I had him on the show because I think he's interesting from the standpoint of his journey. He's certainly not perfect. But if I am, and I said to this guy, listen, don't roll up to me at the opening of the pack and go, hey, how's your buddy doing now? Referring to Petrowski. Like, he's not my buddy, and that's not fair to say in public. Like he does something stupid, like, oh, it's and that's what he came back with me, to me with is no. As long as you hang around and you think that isms are okay and racism and bigotry and homophobia, then we're done. Forget the coffee, forget the podcast. And I went, I was heartbroken because this guy's been a friend for a long time. He's a friend of my mother's, and I shouldn't say friend because we don't hang around. As somebody I respect and whatever. So here's a guy that preaches tolerance and love everywhere, and I think that's what Trump's kind of given us is, dude, we're all racist, intolerant, hateful bigots at some level, and we're working on it, and we're getting better. But that's our survival mode, man. If we didn't fear the stranger or the man with a different colored skin or language or religion, then we wouldn't be here. This is what's kept us alive. This tribalism. This no. Like when we rolled up against a tribe of a different color, we tried to exterminate them completely. We didn't invite them over for dinner and have babies with them. Well, so I think this is pretty natural. And if we don't start the conversation with going, okay, you know what, we're all kind of designed this way, comes from a millennia of evolution, but we're getting better and we're working on it, and we got a long way to go. I think if we start this conversation there, then we got a better discussion.
It's really a shame that you were trying to educate yourself, and I guess you lost that opportunity, because I think that shows an openness, as you said, but it shows I'm trying to learn, right? Mm-hmm. I went to a few recently events put on by Operg Brock. I don't know if you know what Operg Brock is. I actually don't know what the acronym stands for, but they're into social justice, and they're into these type of issues, racism, gender issues, diversity, and the importance of that. And I actually learned quite a bit. So, I'm trying to educate myself just like you were. Hey, I'm struggling. Teach me, right?
Right.
So I kind of go and I'd be quiet and I wouldn't say anything because I'm not an expert on this. But I'm
always opening your mouth when you're not educated is exactly. We all know what happens there.
Well, so that's why, as I said, I always try and look at what are the facts, what does the science say, but what are the issues. But you were just talking about tribalism, and I'll give you a little story from my university years, which I really think encapsulate this. When I was in university, I lived in residence, and I went to Western, and it was we had an amazing O week. I think we have one of the biggest O weeks in Canada, I'm pretty sure, and it was just incredible. And it was interesting because each day or each activity was structured in, you had your floor. I was 4 West. That was my floor. 4 West Delaware, Hall. And so you were with your floor, and that was your group. That was your tribe. And you sometimes competed against the other floors, and that was your tribe. But then the next day, it was your residence. It was this residence versus this one. It was Delaware Hall versus Alumni Hall. And then everyone in Delaware was my friend, right? I never met this guy, but he was my best friend right there because we were going up against Alumni Hall.
Right.
And then the next day, it went faculty-based. So it was everyone in science versus everyone in social science, right? And then it expanded, and you're like, okay, these are all new people. And then finally, the culmination was homecoming, where it was Western was playing football against whoever, right? And it was this entire university was your tribe. And so it was really cool to see how, depending on what context you're in, how it can expand, because it definitely can expand, or how tiny it can be, your floor, your roommate, very small. And it was really a cool experience, and I think they developed it. I was so impressed how they've developed their programming, because each day you build on it. Each day you build more friends, more people, and I don't know, by the end of it, you just felt like you were a part of a team. You were part of the university. So that was a great experience for me.
The identity politics is fractionated us into you can fraction it right down to the individual.
Yes.
Okay, so black people are oppressed. Okay, so black women are more oppressed. Okay, but black women with that are single with children, they're more oppressed. Black women, single children that have autism, and this is what we forget, and what was just tweaked in me. It's like, when you leave your country and you see one of your hometown people across the world somewhere, and you're like, hey, now you've seen this person 100 times in your own community and never spoken to them.
Yeah.
Not even so much as a hello or a greeting, or you might know their name, you might know where they work, you might know who their kids are, but you've never spoken to them because it's this little, we're getting more social, but we're not that social. I mean, we're social creatures, but we could do much better on it. So yeah, what I'm just thinking of is like when you see that person across the world in Italy, you're like, hey, countrymen, all of a sudden, and this is the fractionation of the identities is pulling us away as we fight over left and right, and as we fight as men and women. We forget we're human, period. We share more as human beings. It doesn't matter the race, the color, or the religion, or the sex, then we differ.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what's been lost. And I think this Trump experiment has really, the gap is hugely wide right now. Like even before Trump came in, the left and the right, the gap wasn't as big as it is now. Now the ideological and the political gap is wider than it's ever been. And the extremism on both sides is far more evident than it's ever been. This Antifa or what, I don't even know what to call it, but it makes me sick to see these people running around in masks. This is not activism.
Yeah.
This is not standing up for free speech. Because free speech means even if you're a fucking complete tool and you think that Nazism is the religion of the day or the way that we should proceed, you're obviously a tool, but you should have the right to be a tool in public. You shouldn't have to go to jail or have to pay someone costs because you hurt their fucking feelings. So I think we've just become, the political correctness has gone so radical. And I always compare it to the pendulum. Man, when it swings back, sometimes it cuts hard.
Yeah.
And it's going to swing back. And maybe it's swinging this way right now because we swung so hard left under Obama. We didn't really swing left. But
yeah, I was going to say, like a Democratic American is still far righter than our conservatives, right? Mm-hmm. So just if you look at the spectrum.
So I think it's an interesting conversation that needs to be had. And we're kind of going down the road of identity politics. And that's not why I brought you in. I wanted to talk a little bit of politics.
Good chat.
Yeah. My guest is Mike Britton. I'm Jim Fannon. You can find us on SoundCloud and all the podcast platforms in addition to Twitter and Facebook. Tell us, NPCA comes before council. So it's Tuesday morning right now, as you Facebook Livers know. I heard there was the same 12 people demonstrating the NPCA out there again. Can you speak to that? Because I've never seen the protest, but is it the same 12 people and no more?
I actually, I had to go to, No, I was at City Hall about 5 p.m. because we had the Trillium Awards last night before council. Trillium Awards are for gardens, in the city.
In chamber. In chambers?
It was actually just outside the chambers in the other room. But so anyway, I missed the protest completely. I didn't walk through it. I was up there, so I don't know the size of it. I did see a picture. I think it was Melinda Cheevers from Niagara this week tweeted one out, and it looked like it was bigger than the usual 12, but I didn't see it. I'll be honest. Now the chamber was filled, and the interesting thing about this was there was, I'm not going to say half the chamber, but there was a third of the chamber, and they were all wearing "I love the NPCA" stickers. And they were there was some unionized staff, there was some non-unionized staff. They brought out some of their family or whatever, and then the other kind of was this side, and then this side was some of the protesters came up. A lot of them didn't, but yeah. So it was an interesting dynamic that last night, that's for sure.
What's your take on the NPCA? Do we need to get involved here? Is this just Andy Petrowski would say this is the politics of distraction? Let's get to homelessness. Let's get to taxes. Let's get to water rates. The NPCA. And I mean, I was kind of tweaked by the NPCA because of the issue on Thundering Waters. Mm-hmm. I feel like they got caught with their pants down a couple times. And Tony Quirk was really good about addressing all those issues. And I kind of learned a little bit from him from the standpoint that he doesn't think it's a bad deal that Barrick got hired from the board to staff. Happens all the time. That's not cronyism. Yeah. Okay.
Well, you see it, to be honest, where you see it the most is in not-for-profits all the time. And ones that nobody would question their motives. Places like Community Care or something like that. Where
why would you not question their motives?
I don't know.
It's still cronyism.
I'm just saying, it's very common. I've seen it.
Right.
So,
but it just when I read the Code of Conflict, and Code of Conflict says you may not benefit in any way, shape, or form from being on this board. That job as a CEO or a director or what have you is a huge benefit, but And Tony made the point that no, as long as you don't vote for yourself, it's no conflict.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I don't get it. And then he really articulately spoke to the level of expertise in some of these board members. They're familiar already with the people around the table, but they have a specific expertise into the field that they are applying for. So I don't get it. But what's your take?
But so to get back to the NPCA, I disagree with you on one thing that you've said in the past, and I think we've talked about it before, and that's, well, this is a distraction, this is a waste of time. I can, chew gum and walk. I can do two things at once. Like, I don't mind spending time on some issues. That's why we're elected. So I've openly said, like, if you have an issue, bring it to me. Like,
I
want to
specifically said that about the NPCA.
No, not about the NPCA, but I'm just saying in general, like dual direct. So
code of conduct.
I think if it's an issue for the people, I'll discuss it. That's
fair enough. Yep.
So that's where I sit on this. So this is clearly an issue for, as you said, the same 12 people, but it's an issue for some people. Mm-hmm. We got. I'm just trying to remember, like maybe 7 or 8 emails Sunday and Monday, the last couple of days, about this. So clearly people are concerned. The accusations that are made are very serious. They're very serious accusations. But when you say, should it be discussed at council, should it be this, should it be that? The answer is, I have no idea. We've never put an official document in front of us talking about these accusations, talking about these allegations. We've had a number of documents granted from the source, from the NPCA, showing here's our year-end summary, here's our executive summary, here's our whatever. Mm-hmm. And so it's as a councillor, we've got the CAO of the NPCA saying, we didn't fire 25% of our staff, and he would know. You would think, like, as the CAO of the NPCA, you think he'd know. And then you've got an MPP, Cindy Forrester from Niagara Centre, saying, yeah, they fired 25% of their staff. And you have, citizens saying something else. And I don't know the answer. I honestly do not know. And it's because we don't have any oversight, or we don't fund them, or we don't play any role in their usage, right? So this is where I said I'm happy to spend time on, whatever you want to come and talk to me about. However, city council doesn't have any authority in this sense.
Well, nobody's claiming authority over it. Even
so
the
that is
an
issue.
It's not us. Yeah. The province going, it's not us. And Wynn's like, let's
exactly.
This go away,
So that is the issue. Now, one of the outcomes that I think it's a good thing is last night the motion that was put on the floor was referred for more information, right, to look into that information. And so now we're going to have city staff who don't fund the NPCA, don't appoint board members, they have no bias here, to my knowledge. I have no idea, but they're going to look into some of these issues. The problem they're going to run up against is, where do they get their information, right? But it'll be interesting to see what that report says when it comes back, because though I'm happy to discuss any issue, because I think we've done some good work, and I'll give you some concrete examples about stuff that's not within our mandate whatsoever. I personally have moved a couple motions that are not within our mandate, and I'll tell you why I did them. One of them was about when the autism funding was cut at the provincial level. I don't know if you followed that story, the Autism Doesn't End at 5 campaign. Mm-hmm. That was a woman in my ward, actually, in my community, contacted me and said, my son's autistic. He's losing his funding. He just, turned 6. And I was like, wow, that's heartbreaking. And how we worded the motion was, we were requesting the province, because we can't tell them what to do, to put the funding back in this model. I did my research, and we also said circulate this to the other municipalities and get a public pressure, because that does work, and look what happened, right? I'm not saying my motion changed anything, but I think the cumulative effect of motions from all across the province, from both opposition parties in the legislature, that pressure, the Liberals changed their mind, or the government of the day changed their mind because of that public pressure. Another example is, I moved a motion about banning asbestos within Canada. I went to this is a federal issue, so I went to one of these, the day of mourning, which is for workers who have died on the job or got injured on the job. And they had a speaker there, and she spoke about how her father had died of mesothelioma from asbestos exposure while working in, I believe it was a GM plant, and her uncle was just diagnosed, same thing. And I had no idea, to be honest, until I heard the speaker that we were still importing asbestos, like as a exporting asbestos.
Yeah, and the idea is, like, should the government of the day be charged with murder for
Yeah.
exporting something that's known to kill people?
So to get back we moved a motion in support of this union who was fighting the federal government at the time, and I wasn't the only one. Like, I moved it, a bunch of other municipalities, and again, public pressure. So those are examples where we have no business, right? Like, I'm not an expert in asbestos. I'm not an expert in autism, but and our council, we don't have staff. We don't have doctors for autism, or we don't have people dealing. We might actually have some engineers with asbestos, but I thought it was an important issue. I thought that public pressure could make a difference, and it did. Those are two concrete examples where it did. And so I'm happy to deal with issues that aren't necessarily within our context, but we have to be realistic in our expectations, right? And we have to be realistic in how we word the motion. The motion last night was, whereas City Council has lost faith within the NPCA. I have no evidence. I know that there's a lot of public pressure, against them. I understand that, and there are some serious concerns, but I can't say that I've lost faith in them. I have no concrete evidence to show that, right? So we'll see what that report says.
Yeah. So, and it's my take that there's so many very serious issues that we're facing right now in our community. Jobs is obviously the buzzword, and I'm not sure that governments do anything to create jobs. Obviously, they create a climate where businesses can flourish, but
100%.
Government just doesn't make jobs at any level, and that's why, how many elections have I run in, coming up on 10, I would say, with internal and public and external elections. And my, jobs are the buzzword, and getting people elected even, and I constantly am like, you know what? That's so much bullshit. We don't create jobs as government, and if we do, we're creating the wrong type of jobs. You don't even want the type of jobs that we create. You'll never have a chance to get them. You might want them, and you might think it's good for the economy, but you'll never get them. Yeah. So, the politics of distraction, for me, take away from these important issues like taxes, like hydro costs. Again, it's not in your purview or your mandate. And I'm not saying that the NPCA falls into that category, because I think it's important. It seems to be kind of a rogue institution that maybe has lost its way. Maybe it's just the perception. Maybe it's just a bad PR campaign.
The point I was trying to make is I don't know.
Right.
Like, I honestly don't know.
And I can't say that I know much about it either, but, the optics are all bad. No, we didn't lobby. Well, yeah, we actually found that you had a lobbyist. Oh, yeah, well, we did lobby. Well, No, that was never on the table to pave over the PSW. Actually, yeah, you were considering doing it. You kind of feel like you're in the developer's pocket a little bit, or they are. No, we. Yeah,
I get your point.
No, we did. No, and then it finds later that they had. So I think it's a massive PR problem, obviously. But then when we go down the road of governance, I campaigned on no one Niagara. I don't want to see centralization of power any more than it is already. In my opinion, the region, if anything, should be dissolved as an elected body. Yeah, we can have a service provider or multiple service providers to buy in bulk and get the discount that we need to provide services for Niagara citizens that are consuming water, and we have to get rid of our waste, and we have police and public health, and even if you put economic development under one roof from all the municipalities, which some municipalities are too small to even have an economic development.
Yeah, they don't.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
So there's not 12 economic development departments. There's more like 5 or 7, because they'll. And then the integrity commissioner and the code of conduct, and then we talk dual duty, and dual duty always for me, and I have nothing personal against Mayor Sendzik. I think he does with me a little bit for whatever reason. I don't know. I mean, I think it's interesting that people will not disclose that they have hate in their heart, but they're like, when you look at someone, you're just like, no, you're not my cup of tea. I don't like you. You don't know them. And then very often later you'll go, okay, so I was wrong on that. Or maybe you're validated on it. But we all have this thing in us where you don't like someone for no good apparent reason. Anyway, I met with Walter a decade ago and said, hey, plug me in if you see an opportunity for me to help, because I care and I want to help. And I had known him. And so, I did, taking a shot at what he did at the Grape and Wine Festival, changing the name to the Niagara Wine Festival, and then moving to the St. Catharines Chamber of Commerce, and then changing that to the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce without actually being great or anything, or taking any other. If you took Welland to Niagara Falls, and I'm beating a dead horse here, and then with the idea that one big group is better than 12 small groups, this dual duty came up, or dual, double director, whatever you call it. I thought, and I still think, that was the thin edge of the One Niagara movement. Mm-hmm. First, we get a little tweak here, and I love how he tried to sneak it through in the first weeks of the mandate. Oh, come on, province, just let us do a little test pilot here. Yeah. I'm like, well, that's genius. Yeah. I don't get it, because I don't, and then after I delved into the double director, the dual duty, I didn't like it at all. Yeah. But for me, it's a narrative that's buried back there that's moving this whole One Niagara thing forward, and I felt like that was it. And the One Niagara, I swear, will never pass a triple majority in the region the way the political structure is set up. Mm-hmm.
It would have to be the province, and I don't think any provincial
there's no will right there, no political will right there. And so I'm frustrated with the amount of time that we spend talking about things that just don't matter. Like, what the hell is double direct going to change? How is that going to make my life better? Well, it's not. It's actually going to reduce the number of councillors. That's why I stood against it. And it kind of favors the centralization of power. Yeah. Kill the region. We don't need it as a governing body. But let's not make another level of government that's distant from the people that have the problem. Like, let's keep the solutions home-based, like closest to the people that are suffering the problem, because as you get further away, you get the municipalities that are closest. Then you get the region, they're further away. And then you get the province even further away. And then you get the feds even further away. The feds can't possibly know what's right for Wainfleet, for Niagara Lake. Right. So I guess that's a little bit of my frustration is, like, how much time have we spent on, and I want to get into the Integrity Commissioner and the Code of Conduct, because I think it's wholly important.
You got to let me answer dual rep, because I'm on the other side of that.
Absolutely. And this is I'm doing too much talking. You're my guest. You should be doing the talking. I could do a monologue anytime.
But as far as dual rep is concerned, you mentioned a little bit, like, what's Walter's agenda, because it was Grape and Wine and Chamber of Commerce. And before he ran for mayor, I didn't know Walter. I don't think I ever met Walter before he ran for mayor. I guess his I think one of his family members used to live across the street from my family, but I didn't know Walter at all. So, and I ran on dual rep. It was on my brochure. You can go look at it, flip it up. It was under, I actually had it under a heading about property taxes, holding the line on property taxes, but it was dual representation. It was right on there. And how this happened was when I was looking at running, and I was looking at building a platform and looking at some issues, I went and talked with one of them, of course, was actually Keith Yeo from the Chamber of Commerce, so that makes sense. But I also asked my mom, who do you know? And one of the people that she knew from her time was Bruce Timms. And I talked with him, and obviously this was one that was near and dear to him. And I looked at all this stuff, and I read the documents that the governance committee under, I think, Cisco and was it Birch chaired that committee or looked into that committee in the last term of council, and I read those documents, and I like the idea. I know that you were saying you're against, or you don't want centralization. I find that there are efficiencies in centralization. I find that we can actually save money for centralization.
Never happens, so. In any municipality that's ever amalgamated, they only hired more staff and got bigger on the payroll.
I think that the services, and this is a comment that Tony actually made on your show the other day, and I think it's that the amalgamation of some services. We just talked about economic development, right? We can point to, at the city, we just amalgamated, we're in the process of amalgamating our Parks and Rec department and our TES are now all being moved into the Lake Street Yard, on the Lake Street Yard. And so that for cost savings, right? Like we're saving costs because we're all moving into this one building. We're expanding that one. But so I believe, this is my belief, that you can find efficiencies through centralization. Also, when you look at the stats, and this is where Tony and I will actually differ because he said he wants more politicians. I think we have too many. I think when we compare ourselves, we have about 130 throughout the region, I think, just municipally. And we have about 430,000 people in Niagara. You look at Hamilton, which I know is a one-tier system, a different city, but they have 550,000. They have 100,000 more than us, and they have 16 people. 16. Now, is that too low? Maybe. But when you've got 16 on one hand, you've got 130, there's got to be a happy medium. There's got to be a happy... Now, to Hamilton's point, they don't have two tiers. They're getting rid of the region, to your point.
There's not many municipalities that have the two tiers. There's only a few in Ontario that are left, I think.
And so I think we could reduce the number of politicians and not hurt democracy in any way.
Yeah, let's start with killing the region. There's 31 of them right there, including the chair. Big paychecks, not so much getting done. So, well, I appreciate your thoughts on that, but I will say that, I disagree with the idea that even if you find efficiencies, they'll be absorbed with new staff because there's always, every time we amalgamate, there's never been a case of it anywhere. And actually, there's a lot of de-amalgamation going on. You know, they were forced into it, or they decided it was going to be a better deal, and then we're like, no, this ain't working, man. Let's go back to so I'd like to see that. But just switching gears to the Integrity Commissioner, and I think this is a wholly important conversation because we haven't, at the region, we haven't dealt with the Code of Conduct yet. I see something very lacking in the idea that a Code of Conduct doesn't respect freedom of speech or the Charter at any level, especially for a politician. I think a politician needs to be able to say whatever the hell he wants where it relates to politics. If you don't like it, vote him out. If he commits a crime, then okay. Yeah. But other than that, I mean, just because you say something that's offensive, or, somebody used the other day of a regional council, a female regional councillor was on the beach topless in town here. That'd be that could be a code violation. I'm like, really? But if she was on Cuba on a nude beach, because it's legal to be topless in Ontario. Yeah. But on a nude beach, on an international nude beach, now it's not offensive to me. I'm like, come on, I don't get this. So now it gets into the idea, okay, well, first of all, we don't have a standardized code across Ontario or Canada. I think that is important.
Yeah, I would agree with
that.
The
way these integrity commissioners are appointed with no real expertise and being appointed or hired by the current sitting government is, obviously could be abused.
On that, just a quick, we'll go through each point, but I don't know how to solve this one, but I don't like that it's one person. You talk about jury of your peers. You talk about the relationship to the charter, and that one of the things you have is right to be judged by your peers and stuff like that, or one person is going to decide whether this was right or wrong. Everyone has their own biases, as we talked. Everyone's an individual. Everyone. So
down the bias.
But I was saying
unconscious,
mandatory
unconscious bias training.
But so that's, I don't know what the issue is, because it's already a very expensive process. So I don't want to hire 12 of them. Right, that would be ludicrous. But it's just one of the issues I've had. I don't know what the solution is.
Yeah. Well, I think the solution is a code that's consistent right across all levels of government that allows people to say what they want, with the idea that unless you're breaking a law, and we even saw, at the Municipal Elections Act doesn't really give a recall mechanism. You can't vote someone off council because they're a drug user, Rob Ford.
Yeah.
We saw that, and I think that maybe people now are thinking, maybe a recall mechanism would be good.
think we were talking about
under certain circumstances, referenda, I think, would be good. And, Petrosky, to his credit, he's done some good things and some not so good things. Brought a motion forward at the region one time to initiate a referenda. He had the questions all laid out, and he got voted right off the floor. What the hell's wrong with having a non-binding plebiscite where people can go and vote and politicians can take the pulse of the community and go, oh, really? Everyone wants a one Niagara? Well, maybe we should be talking about that. The problem is no one wants a freaking one Niagara except the big business guys, with the idea that they're going to save money or what, blah, blah, blah. Or there's too many politicians. I personally think the more politicians, the better access I have to them. So if I don't call, if Jenny Stevens is busy, what's his name? I'll pick up the phone maybe.
Haywood.
Haywood, yeah. Who I don't know either, but kind of is a hero for me from the standpoint that he switched his vote on that double direct thing, and he killed it. And I was on 12 agendas to go speak at it all across the region to make sure it didn't happen. And so I'm glad he did that because I don't know him. But so the code is a problem. The code's going to come back before regional council. But when Petrosky said, well, I'm going to challenge the constitutionality of the code, I'm like, yeah, let's do this, because you've got all these codes all over the place that say different things. And there's an idea that, no, you're 24/7 counselor. And it doesn't matter where you go topless or whose basement you're watching football in when you make an inappropriate remark or you do something inappropriate, that can be all dragged up before the integrity commissioner and waste all this money with the idea that there's really no teeth in a punishment. I mean, they screwed up the punishment so bad on Petrosky, it was unreal. Like, he seemed to comply with the sensitivity and the apology and all this kind of stuff, but they really have no mandate to make him do anything, including coming to his seat. Maybe they can kick him off committees, but I kind of hold the line that, no, if you don't like it, vote me out. And unless I've done something, well, even then, even if you've done something criminal, I don't know that there's a mechanism to get someone off council. But this whole idea that we have to clean up the code of conduct, and we need a process that respects the charter as far as the integrity commissioner goes. And this integrity commissioner, we talked briefly just before we went on air here about you being the subject of integrity complaints. And so, tell me a little bit about that experience and the frustration of, one, not being able to face your accuser. You actually don't even have a copy of the complaint. You don't get to speak to the guy that renders the decision until after his decision's rendered. So jurisprudence goes right out the freaking window. And this is, again, like freedom of speech, one of our fundamentally most important core principles. And we're like, nah, that's fine. So, and now being used as a political tool, right? So someone gets pissed off with Mike Britton, or, okay, I'll file a complaint. I mean, we even have bodies that aren't eligible to file complaints under the system, i.e. Town of Pelham. They're not a person.
Well, that's
out of order right off the bat.
I had never considered that, because one of the complaints that was filed against me was from Jeff Birch, who's the director of the executive director of the Folk Arts Multicultural Center. And I remember about halfway through when it kind of most people were on the side of, this is a waste of money, this is ridiculous. The narrative was tried to be switched. Well, no, it wasn't Jeff Birch. It was the Folk Arts.
Even worse. Yeah.
So I actually don't know how that ever got cleared up. But that was what they kind of said, was it was actually the Folk Arts Board that filed this complaint. Just to give some background, I should have led with this, is the Folk Arts gets a grant from the city for their festival each year under the Grants and Festivals program, and they come to council and they tell us what they're going to use the money for, right? It's kind of the, hey, tell us what you're doing with the taxpayers' dollars, right? And I had heard some issues. I love the Folk Arts Festival. It's I think I went to every open house the last 2 years, and there's about 30 some of them, there maybe 20. And they're different cultural societies. The Polish community, the Armenian community, the Ukrainian community all have their open houses in there, and they're just wonderful. But there were some issues. Like, I don't need to get into the weeds, but I heard from some of the cultural communities that there were some issues with the festival. They were worried about some concerns, and as a representative, I asked these questions, right? Just like I did last night with the NPCA. I don't know, you said you didn't watch, but I went, here's an email that I received with these concerns. And I asked them, right? They're not going to file at least I hope not, they're going to file an integrity commissioner complaint, because they were harsh questions. Like, I asked them, this was the NPCA, like, somebody's saying you're not filling your mandate because of this, this, and this. Like, I was pretty Bolton with them, and that's kind of what I was doing. I said, the cultural community has brought these concerns. Can you, answer? And the allegation was that I bullied them by asking these questions. And so that was the integrity commissioner complaint, was bullying. Now, there was a report. It went through. The commissioner, integrity commissioner, just said it was completely politically driven. I was really surprised, because this is a lawyer. His name was, I think it was John Mascarin who did it. Yeah, it was John Mascarin. And he's a lawyer, and so usually lawyers are careful with their language, but he used qualifiers like it was totally unwarranted and completely, like it was really like strong language. The report's available online. We received it at council. It's open to the public. Now, he wrote that report without ever contacting me. But the reason given was that it never actually got to the investigative stage. It was that he was able to just watch the video and see that there wasn't enough evidence to even go forward with it.
Cool, man.
So
I mean, in this case, it worked out all right, but I mean, it could have very easily turned out
the other way.
And then what? You're sitting there going, "What? No one talked to me."
Yeah.
And we got this decision that says I'm guilty of this, this, and this, and this, and I don't even get to.
And if I stand up in council once like Andy, right? If I stand up in council once it's out there, well, I'm going to fight the expert, right? Like, that's
the $400 an hour guy.
That looks pretty bad, right? So, it was a bit of a weird process to go through. The other integrity commissioner complaint, the complainant withdrew, I think, once they found that they didn't have enough evidence. But they withdrew it, so that never went all the way through the steps. But so I'm intimate with the process and the lack thereof, to be honest. I think that, as we discussed, there is a need for oversight. I think that there is a need. I'm a believer of that. But the standardization of a code would definitely be an important step to making it more effective.
What's your take on capacity? I mean, this has been talked about a lot, official capacity.
Yeah.
And the code, I think, the code of conduct came before Mascarin brought the code of conduct to the region.
Yeah.
And then Volpatti and Quirk gutted it, as far as they made 54 changes or amendments to it. It sounds like it might actually hold, but it's going to come back. It might be approved by the committee, though, and then come back to be ratified by council, and maybe there'll be some debate over that, but I'm not sure what happens there. But this idea, and then Sandy Annunziata, obviously, I don't know Sandy that well. I like Sandy kind of a lot. I went to high school with him, so I knew him from Notre Dame a little bit. He's a man's man, and I'm kind of that guy too. I don't agree with everything he does. He's obviously conservative, and I'm kind of a lefty. But big gonads, man, taking the chair at NPCA. And I think Timms was smart to get the fuck out of the way, because, he probably wants to be reelected again. And I'm thinking that probably being the chair of the NPCA for Bruce wasn't the most appropriate place for him to be if he wanted to be reelected. So I think he got out of the way smartly because of that.
It was a hornet's nest for Sandy to get into, for sure. Like,
I'm
going to be honest,
takes big
just
gonads.
last night, like with the debate that we had last night, like I almost wanted to stay quiet, right? Stay out of it. Don't say anything, because it's such a hornet's nest. But I realized, like, I had these questions from residents, and I needed to stand up and ask them, right? Like, this is because I didn't know the answers. So,
and I'm certainly not prepared. And I love having this conversation. So thanks. Mike Britton's my guest, councillor for City of St. Catharines. We actually think in conversations. I mean, you can sit there and think all day in your head. Nothing ever changes. It's not until we try to articulate our argument, and this is what I do as an openness, low in conscientiousness. I'm about ideas, and I want to discuss the issues of the day, mostly. But it's not until I put the words off my lips that someone will go, no, that's wrong. And we were talking about this Charlie thing with some Green Party friends, old Green Party friends, because I'm not really connected to the party that much. I was in Toronto this weekend. Had dinner with a couple of girlfriends of mine that were connected to the party that go way back to '06. And so I was articulating this frustration about Charlie, the 10-year-old. You know, and I probably got my information wrong, but I phrased it as like, at 10 years old, you shouldn't be able to say, okay, take this sexual organ off me and put a new one, a different one on. Like it sounds like. But it's not until I present my case orally and verbally and out to the universe that my friends and enemies, and by the way, I learn more from my political and functional enemies than I do anyone else. Because the yes people are like, oh, yeah. When you hang around with people all think the same, you don't learn a damn thing. So it's not till the words come off our lips that someone go, oh, dude, that's so wrong, and this is why. And then you soften your position on it. It's like, that idea is dead now. Rather than me dying, when, you know, I put the words out there, the idea either lives on and you're validated that you feel right, incorrectly or not, and then if you're off base, you get shut down right away. So this is, again, goes back to, you know, and we started talking about Sandy in the official capacity, this idea that he's driving to CFRB every week in Toronto and claiming, I don't know, $150 in mileage or something like that, right? And everyone's drinking the Kool-Aid on this thing. And I'm not a Sandy Annunziata honk. You know, he's not my best friend. Never had a beer with the guy. It's just like you. I mean, I talk to people in politics. I can disagree respectfully and then go for a beer, but I mean, Sandy's not a friend of mine. So I reached out to him and said, like, what's this deal all about? Well, it's $4,000. Well, how many times you going up there every week? Well, so what's that, like 40, 45 weeks if you take out the holidays? Yeah, something like that. And I go, and they announce you as councillor. Oh, yeah, every break. Every going out, every extra, and I'm sitting with Sandy Annunziata, elected councillor in Niagara Region. I don't get the problem. Well, he's not in official capacity, and again, I'm beating around the bush and going long-winded here. It's my style. Is that a legitimate expense? Well, damn straight it is to me. I'm the only guy that I know, well, that has said publicly, it's a good deal, man, $4,000. $4,000. Have you seen 1010's rates? Like, they're probably $100 a 30-second commercial, or 70 at least. I mean, here in town, I think I paid 50. I mean, maybe you can get a good deal if you buy more, but 1010, their rates are astronomical, I would think. So, and Sandy's giving us some exposure. Maybe they're not talking about local issues, but nobody even talks local issues on our local talk station. Like, duh, they talk to roundtables, and don't get me started on the roundtable. But okay, so I came out and I said, you know what? I think it's a good deal. Because at $4,000, if he had 40 appearances, that's got to be 1,000 mentions. 1,000 mentions in going into the show, into the commercial, out of the commercial, at the beginning of the show, the promo for the show, the Facebook page of the show, you know, Agar's tweets and stuff like that. It's always Sandy, Niagara Region. So I think it's a good deal. But it really brought to light this idea of official capacity. So I'm interested on your take of when you're a councillor, when you're not a councillor. Because let's face it, some of our integrity meters are off. Some of us don't really get when we're acting. Our conscience is maybe a little bit conscious. What is it? Our conscience. Sometimes isn't going, that's inappropriate. Some people don't have that as much as others do. I kind of feel like if you live by your conscience, you're going to be okay. Yeah. But, you know, there's very few psychopaths out there that, you know, don't have a conscience. But you can't count on everyone for that. So then it comes back to the code of conduct. And then the code brings in the integrity commissioner. And how much time and money this is eaten up. Now, everyone's pissed off about this $44,000, you know, that Andy brought forward for a cost of, I think he was suing the region to stand up for his democratic right. That didn't go so well. But the tweets that brought his integrity commissioner complaints were out there for a year.
Yeah.
At least for months and months and months. They were there sitting there. Anyone could have looked at it and got offended. And it wasn't until this political movement that said, okay, let's go get them. We'll pull up this and we'll pull up that and we'll pull up this, and some in the media, some in council, some in different districts. All of a sudden, you know how much that one integrity complaint against Andy cost the taxpayers? $25,000. Wow. Because Mascarin is talking to people. Hi, I want to call and talk about Andy offended me. Oh, go on. He talks for 2 hours. That's $800, $900.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding. Like, I don't get it. So, yeah, I appreciate your thoughts on this idea of, you said watching football in the basement of my friend's house. Andy talks about being on a fishing boat up north. An activist here in town here was talking about, a certain councillor going topless on a beach, how that was inappropriate. Really? In Ontario?
Yeah, so I think that there's two parts to this, and one is the 24, or, your official capacity, and the other part is what the code dictates. I tend to fall on the side of you are kind of on the clock more often than not, to be honest, 24/7. I fall on that side of that spectrum. And I think it's because you're expected to you're held to a higher regard as a politician. My classics background reminds me of, there's a quote Caesar said, Caesar's wife has to be above reproach, right? Even his family has to be, the perfect. It has optics, right? So there's a story back, and he divorced one of his wives because there was an implication that she was sleeping around. She wasn't. He knew she wasn't, but he divorced her because of the implication. Caesar's wife has to be above reproach. So obviously that's 2,000 years ago, not, but that idea that politicians are held to a higher regard, I believe in that. I do. That said, then there is what you were talking about, which is freedom of speech, which is they can be held to a higher regard, but they can also speak their mind, right? They shouldn't be attacked for going to church. I think Selena Volpatti made that point during the code discussions at the region. She said, I'm Catholic. I go, to church, and my church believes in X, Y, and Z. I shouldn't have to defend that, right, in a political court of law, because this is my beliefs. And I was like, yeah, that's a fair point. So I feel like it's the issue with the code. So yes, I would say you're on more often than not. But I don't think the code should be attacking personality traits, like in that sense, like the belief structure. Mm-hmm. As we talked about earlier with my integrity complaints, I believe that there needs to be an oversight body, but it needs to be far better regulated. And actually, I'm going to get into a different issue here a little bit, but when the first things about the tweets and Andy Petrowski came up, I actually asked my city council for a review of our code of conduct. So that's something that should be coming back any time now, because that was over 2 years ago. We have an issue with backlogs and reports and stuff like that. So, I asked for that almost immediately after. I didn't really get any press or anything. We didn't strike a committee, but we're looking at reviewing ours and making sure that it does follow guidelines. I don't think I mentioned follow the charter or anything like that.
Well, I think you need this. I think the code of conduct needs to be measured to the charter, and it needs to be nationwide. I think that the municipal governments all over the place are having a frustration with what do you do with a Rob Ford when he goes rogue?
Yeah.
Short of being incarcerated, there's no real function to get. So do we need a recall mechanism? But I just want to touch on this important issue too, because I think it's outrageous that if you're a Christian and your belief is traditional marriage, that doesn't automatically make you a hate-filled homophobe.
Yeah.
If you're pro-life, doesn't mean automatically you hate women. Like, this is what the left is spewing these days, and this is why I'm so turned off with it. We have a pro-life demonstration at the corner of Martindale and 4th Ave. They got their really graphic signs, and I'm not down with that, but there's certain freedom of speech in that, too. I know there's an argument of what happens when I drive my 4-year-old or my 10-year-old by that goes, Mommy, why is there a dead baby on that placard? Well, placard, you wouldn't be using that term, but...
it's very intelligent for you.
So, measuring the freedom of speech, the aspect of freedom of speech was so important, especially for the ideologues. for the racist, homophobic, intolerant assholes out there. It's important, especially important for them, so that they can show the world what an idiot they are. Mm. But the idea that if you're pro-life, you hate women is so far whacked out. Like, this is where the conversation stops. Oh, you hate women. So they're protesting on Martindale Road. Some jackass comes up shirtless with something written on his shirt, obviously looking for confrontation. He stomps all over their signs. This actually happened. I don't know if you heard this. It got reported. And, man, do we have a low threshold for what is news these days, especially locally? Ugh. Yeah. And I'm not saying this is news. Don't get me wrong. Bad interviews. The idea. So this guy comes up, and he stomps all over their signs and tries to ruin their signs. And he's probably having words with them, too. In my mind, it's like if you spit on someone, that's assault. If you throw blood on someone, that's assault. If you take their sign out of their hand and put it on the ground, even though you maybe haven't even touched them, I think that could be threatening, and it could be seen as assault. And I figure that's more assault, destroying a protester's sign at a picket.
Imagine doing that at the picketers right now at Niagara College.
No.
You think that you get away with that?
Oh, no. So, again, I think that's more assault. So then, on social media, one of my favorite left-wing wackos who's like diversity everywhere, equality everywhere, quotas. Like, come on, man. We can't legislate diversity and equality. We're not freaking equal for the first part. And let's talk about why, both with races and sexes. So he says, more of this. I'm like, more of what? Assault? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm like, dude, assault over free speech. Got it. And so I hate women because I'm pro-life. I'm not pro-life. But because I came out in that argument in favor of the guy that was the people that were demonstrating, not the guy that was assaulting them, now I hate women. So I find it sickening, actually, how your limiting beliefs, being whatever they are, being based in Christianity or whatever. And it's funny because if I say I'm in favor of traditional marriage, many would say I'm a homophobe, and I'm not. I mean, I love who you want. I think that's fine. Dolphins are gay in the wild. I think humans are gay naturally. You don't learn to be gay. Can't turn it off. But this idea that as soon as you come out in favor of something, that makes you a certain way is it makes me sick, and it also stifles the conversation. And more so now, I think the left is engaging in this identity politics of you're a racist homophobe because you believe in this, and I said the other day the fundamental Western values that we've assumed are valid. And everyone's like, what? How can you say? Well, yeah. Like, we have some fundamental Western values that have worked for a long time. And how can you prove it? Well, people want to come to these countries, North America. They want to live here for what reason? Because our assumptions about society and civilization have worked and are still working hundreds and hundreds of years and sometimes thousands of years.
Well, and if you want to see where those are based, I know in the States there's the one nation under God, of course, but in our charter we have the same thing, right? Our national anthem, God Save This Land. Like it's very. But now we're seeing that prayer taken out. Soon the national anthem will be changed because it only deals with one God. I went to a hotel in Markham this week. Wow, what an experience that was. I like going to Toronto, but I'm never immersed in that much culture. And to be the minority,
it's
an interesting.
It's weird, man. Especially when it's like, if I go to Harlem, I guess you expect everyone to be black around you. But in Canada, like when I walk into McDonald's and I'm the only white guy there, and everyone's Asian or Chinese, I'm like, wow, this is weird. It's a learning experience. Like, it's different for me.
I spent some time in Scarborough doing some work, and in Brampton, and like there's many situations there, and I've learned a lot because I try and engage and I try and learn. It's the reason I like the Folk Arts Festival is when you go into one of those open houses and everyone's, you're at the Armenian Center, or everyone, you go to the Hindu Samaj, or, you go to the mosque. I've been to the mosque a number of times, and it's interesting. It's fascinating learning. Like,
and that's, I think,
the feeling you get, I think that's what you're saying. The feeling you get, like you feel something when you're in a room and you're, oh, wow, I'm the only, white guy or whatever. Yeah. You get that feeling. I'm not saying, like, I don't know. I'm interested
as
by it.
Privileged, white, good-looking single men, we don't get the chance to feel that very often. And there's nothing, I'm not trying to put myself in that position, because there's really there's no hate or intolerance that's coming off you in Markham at a McDonald's in the morning just because you're the only white guy in there. But in the room, Courtyard Marriott, there was a Holy Bible and a Book of Mormon in the drawer. Really? I'm like, what? Oh, wow. I've never seen another religious book, and this is another failing. I can't remember the speaker, but it just struck such a chord with me. Universities are failing us, and I think they're about to change for the better rapidly soon. Knowledge is everywhere. We can watch university lectures online for nothing. And I think a lot of that is where we'll be educated. And you have a standardized test. You want to watch all these things and go write the test, you should be able to get a degree. But what our learning, especially our higher learning institutions, but even in an elementary school, why don't we teach more world religions? Because if I don't understand what the Muslim creed is or what they believe in, then I can't have any respect for it. And if I just grew up Christian my whole life, even though I grew up Catholic, and I consider is that Christian?
Yes.
This is the failing of our learning institutions, is teach them all.
Yeah.
You're not going to have the in-depth into all of them, but that way, when we roll up on a Chinese guy who claims to be Hindu or whatever, I think it's Hindu, one of the predominant religions over there, at least you got a background into what makes him tick and what his core values are, because just being in our little silos is just making us more racist and intolerant, which, I've said many times before, I think is humans' natural proclivity. One of my favorite new words. Ooh. Yeah. So, and it also fosters a discussion. So it just seems like most of the time now, the left and the right is just like, oh no, you're hate-filled, you're this, you're that, and then the discussion stops. So, we really need to keep the discussion going. The left does things really well that the right doesn't do well, and the right do a lot of things well that the left doesn't do well. And we've talked about this on other shows, so I won't beat it up. But these are personality types that have been documented over many decades, at least, as we try and understand our own minds, our own consciousness. Like, what the hell? Why does a consciousness serve us? There's not many other animals that have consciousness, but we're finding it in chimps now. If you put lipstick on a chimp and show him his picture in a mirror, he'll wipe it off. So he has to be conscious at some level. Maybe not that he's going to die in 20 years like we are, Yeah. But there's, and I just find here we don't even know where we came from for sure. There's a theory of evolution. That's why they call it a theory, because there's so many damn holes in it. And then we have, books like the Bible that are sometimes metaphorical stories, I think, that, that are told in ways that we can understand.
Jesus literally talks in parables. Like, they're literally, here's the story I'm going to make up for you to prove a point. Right? Jesus isn't a literalist.
But then we will defend to the death our God that we don't even know exists. Or we don't know is the right God. But we will fight to the death to defend our God. And we don't even know where we came from for sure. We could be an alien ant farm, And I think that's an interesting concept. But the discussion needs to be continued. And I'm not in favor of anything that shuts it down by saying you're a racist homophobe because you said this. I made the joke, if I tweet out a naked picture of me sitting on a stool with my legs open, no one's going to call that pornographic. So the media does have to have a responsibility of, okay, and I fell for it too. But you don't, we're all in this together, and we're getting nowhere by fighting each other. And this is what Trump has brought to the forefront. And I think this transgender discussion has really brought the feminists and some of the people that are struggling with sexual identity out, and I don't understand it. I'm learning right here. And then so talking to you,
me too.
Completely ignorant of some of these facts. I only have some beliefs that are hardwired into me and have been, conditioned into me by society that I'm wrestling with because I'm like, ooh, 10-year-old Charlie? I don't know.
So two things that we touched on a few times that I wanted to expand on. I don't know how we're doing for time, but
great, man.
You were just talking about the media and locally and how, you've had some issues with it, of course, on the radio and all different levels. I have to say, so far I've only been in this gig now almost 3 years, like just under 3 years. I've been pretty lucky, I think, at council with both our reporters from both our major, Karina Walters from the Standard and Melinda Cheevers, and before her Scott Ross from Niagara This Week. They are, I don't know what you think of their writing, but like it's very, here's what happened. If you look at their NPCA article just this morning from last night, that was a complicated 2.5-hour issue, and it was like, here's what happened. I would say that both sides of the coin should be happy with that article. Like, at least I read it and I went, that's
as a factual account of what went down.
And so I would say that with at least my experience, even at 610, they've invited me on for certain issues. Hey, you moved this motion about Facer Street. Why don't you come on? So like, I feel like I've been given a pretty fair shot. But then there, as we talked about Andy and like the kind of constant, pushing on them. So I feel like I've been pretty lucky with media locally. So that was just the one point. And I sound like I'm poundering right now trying to get press. But if you're watching, write a nice article. No,
I'm not getting on 610 anytime soon.
But I think I can look back.
Advertising.
Something I just mentioned to you, I'm in the process of redoing my website. And one of the things I'm doing on it is just compiling past news articles. Obviously a little bit of self-promotion, obviously, for myself, but like here are the news articles, and just going through them was a nice little look back at what's been accomplished, what's been done at council, and I would say those articles, I even put in some of them about where we had some budget squabbles that were quite vocal, between myself and the budget chair and the mayor.
Wow. I'd love to be in the room for that.
But so I'm just saying,
like, budget committees at committee meetings of budget at the city.
Pardon?
Are they public? Those meetings?
Yeah, they're public. And they're live streamed now.
Oh, okay, cool.
Which is great. That's a new thing this year, I think. But anyway, so like
I
put
you
those
and Cisco
articles.
and the mayor don't see eye to eye on every subject all the time. You have your
Have
own
you not seen these articles? He shut off my mic the one time. He got mad that I used a PowerPoint presentation. So. Yeah, those are legitimate articles that I put on my website because I wanted to give, like, here's the account. But even those articles where clearly there's one side and there's another, I was quite happy with, right? Like, there's an issue where my microphone got shut off, or, I was dressed down for using a PowerPoint, or, some pretty serious, like, controversial back and forth issues. And I was happy with the reporting. I'll say that. Like, it was very much, this happened, make your own kind of decision.
Yeah. And I guess you have to draw the line somewhere, but as it relates to you going on the radio, I absolutely appreciate you being given the opportunity to go on and speak about something. But it's basic propaganda, right? So if they're talking to you about a motion that you're bringing forward, you're going to speak to all the reasons why it comes, and then often what we don't get is the other side of the story. And you know what? For all I care, I don't really care what Mike Britton thinks about his own measure, his own motion. I do care what the callers think, because sometimes the callers can call in and go, you know what, I've known Mike since blah, 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 and you know what, here's a relevant part of the conversation you missed here, and it could be all BS, but at least, so I'm more like more callers, less host, makes for a better show. But
so just the budget issue was a great example where the radio, I think, really helped me here. Was there was this issue about, so there's the city's tax rate, and then there's the blended tax rate. I don't want to go too far into the weeds here, but there's the city increases our expenses and our budget by so much, and there's that percentage, and then you have to factor in the school board and the region, and that gets your final property tax, which is called the blended rate. Well, for years and years, and you can look back at the Standard and Niagara This Week and Bullet News when it existed, and everyone they
Bullet News.
I'm just saying, you can look back, and they always presented the the city tax rate. Here's the city tax rate. Well, 2 years ago, we had a bad budget year, and there were legitimate reasons for it, so I wasn't even actually arguing that point, but I was arguing transparency, which was we were now advertising the blended tax rate. It was the first thing you see when you open the budget book, because that was the year the region came in at 0%, and it made it look like we did a very good job. So our rate was 5%. It was a 5% tax increase, with the inflation being 2%. And so anyway, I said that's wrong. I said we should not be showing the blended tax rate when for years and years we've been showing the city tax rate. That was my argument, and nobody would listen to me. And maybe this is a little bit about the media, but I said it in the budget chambers. I actually called Grant LaFlèche, funny enough. I thought he was. I called Grant LaFlèche because I thought he would be the one to.
I don't know that name.
I thought he would be the one to want to like sink his teeth in this story, because I said it in budget chambers, nobody picked it up. I said it, again, nobody picked it up, and so I called Grant, and I thought he'd sink his teeth into this, and his response was simply, "Well, I don't cover St. Catharines City Council, so maybe talk to Karina." Right? That was his response, and it was funny because about a week later, after I did get press, he wrote an article on me, which was funny. But just to say,
maybe Grant LaFlèche, did you say? Maybe he's just like an opinion. Maybe he's a columnist, not a reporter.
Yeah. I thought maybe because I thought he could expand into a Niagara. Because the year that the region came in at 0, other municipalities started doing the blended rate too. Pelham did it. I think Fort Erie did it. Like other cities started doing that same propaganda in this sense. So anyway, after all this, and I wasn't getting any press, or I wasn't getting any knowledge on this, I wanted people to know it's 5%. Because how do you call your counselor and say, I'm not okay with 5% if you don't hear the 5% number? So then I called up 610, and they went, yeah, come on, talk to us, right? And after that, there was articles in Standard. There was the article.
Because they don't have to pay you to come on. It's free content. They're thinking, Bell won't pay for a new host out here, so get Mike Britton to come on.
But I'm just saying,
have to pay him.
I have to thank 610, because after that time that I was on the radio, they weren't all great articles, like in the sense that they were saying, Mike Britton blindsides the budget chair, and he goes up, and is this the breaking of the Cisco 5? And Doug Harrod wrote an article calling me the Yoko Ono of the Cisco 5.
Doug. Is he a comedian?
Anyway, yeah, he is actually, I think. But
he thinks he is.
Anyway, so it wasn't all good press, but the 5% number was out there, and after I went on that radio, we knew about the 5%. Now it ended up still being 5%, but my mission was accomplished, which was transparency in that number.
And then it finally got reported after 610 picks it up, because 610 can't say something without, and vice versa.
Yeah.
I mean, 610 takes a lot of their news from the print in this town too, because the print's got a little bit more resources as far as sending a guy out to do some investigation. I mean, when we found out the bridge was being, I was at the station when the bridge, when they stopped working the bridge, and I called Tripp, and I'm like, hey, I didn't know him at the time. I still don't know him. What's up with the bridge? Oh, we're shutting it down for Easter. I'm like, it's Tuesday. Easter's not for 4 or 5 days. What do you mean? And then it came out that there were some stability issues. So I don't have time for the propaganda so much. But
anyway, that was just my little media rant. The other issue, I don't know if you had one queued up, but we were talking a little bit about women, and you talked about that one culture where the women were all working together, the 15, and they.
Well, this is in every culture.
But women were something together. About women in politics. I've been looking into this a little bit recently. Our Association of Municipalities of Ontario, it's this body that kind of represents all of us, put out some literature on how we can help improve the number of women in politics. And I was looking at the statistics from our last election in Niagara, St. Catharines in particular, and I found a really interesting statistic, which for me is exciting. And it's that the percentage of women that won versus ran, and the percentage of men that won versus ran is the same, 33%. The problem is that 9 women ran, this is a regional city, and 3 won. And 40, whatever, 50 it was, men ran, and, the rest of them won. So the percentage, though, was the same, which is exciting for me, because I think that if we can get more women to run, it's not that there's that anti-woman, like we don't want to vote for women. Sexism exists. Sexism is still a problem, but the fact is, if we get more women to run, I think more women will be elected, and that's a really.
And I think a society as a whole will be better. What I'm afraid of is quotas, and I will say that I think that, and for places like the United States, and maybe it's too simple of an analogy, but before Clinton lost, which I lightly predicted, the day before, I said to the girl I was getting water from, I'm like, oh, wait till you wake up tomorrow and Donald Trump is president. I was half joking, half not. Women are smarter than men. Boys are stupid. They're and women just don't have any fucking idea what it means to think about sex thousands of times a day. They don't have that problem. We have this thing called testosterone that makes us stupid and aggressive and more sexually driven, I think.
I don't know where you're going with that one, but my point was women in politics. That's what I was.
Yeah, and I think it makes for a softer, more tolerant society.
Yeah. Well,
but the point I was making is, I think women, again, they have more things that are important to them. Family is important. If you're a 30-year-old woman and you don't have a child right now, guess what your next most likely step in your life is going to be that you make consciously. There's very few women like Oprah Winfrey with no babies. I'm going to have a career, because this is the most important thing a woman can do is have a baby. Now, some women don't want to have babies, but most of them crave. We all want family. What are you going to do when you're 50 years old if you don't have any kids? You have no one around you. So I think women are emotionally more attentive to the fact that what's really important. I struggle with running for the region. I see the region as a place where I could possibly be elected for the first time, because I've always run green, and I've never really run to win.
Right.
You know, even running for mayor was just to make sure that I exposed Walter for who he was. I didn't want him to be elected and me sitting on the sidelines going, "Oh man, if I could have stopped that," you know. And my life didn't end when Walter was elected. And, you know, I have no problem with Walter personally if he wants to bury the hatchet, but for whatever reason, that's, you know, he doesn't see me as an ally or anybody that really cares about his community, or otherwise he would plug me in somehow. I struggle with running with the region because my mother from the other side, you know, she died 7 years ago. And I've been on boards, many boards before. And her take on it would be, why do you want to sit with these coconuts? With these people that don't really have anything better to do. You know, the people they're really killing it out there, that are really have good businesses, they don't have time to run for the region. So what do you get as a candidate? What do you get as a candidate for a potential election? Now, you're a young guy, and you know you're putting your heart and soul into this, but most people have businesses and jobs, and they can't afford. And I think on some level, women look at this and go, I'm not fucking going to sit up with those turkeys because they're stupid.
Yeah.
They don't get it. And I'm way too intelligent to be with them. So I think there's a whole bunch of natural reasons why, and there's no gender pay gap. Like, stop it. Women are making more money, and the younger women are making more money than the younger men right now in lots of areas.
Well, so just the note of the women personality on council. On city council, we have two, and Sandy Bellows was elected, you know, the same time I was. And she's actually stood up a few times when maybe it'll be a contentious issue, and she'll say,
I've never seen her stand up or say anything.
I'm just trying to, I want to get this right, because she has this, she'll one time just said, you know, if you boys can't play nice in the sandbox.
Sexist!
Right? But she said that before, right, when we're really in a contentious issue. And it's almost, she brings us back to reality, right? We're blowing something out of proportion, you know, or whatever the case may be.
Well, that's where
she wasn't able to make it last night at the NPCA issue, but I feel like she's been that kind of calming,
nurturing mother figure.
Yeah, like
I
call her my political mom because she actually went to high school with my actual mom. And so it's a small world. It seems everybody went to Grantham High School in this city with my mother. But anyway, so they're I think the same age or within 1 year. So when we go to events and whatever, she's my political mom. I'm the same age as her son. Yeah, it's kind of fun. We have a good relationship, and she definitely does bring that reason.
Okay, it's 11:38. I got to get you out of here for a nooner, but just talk to me about what's coming up. You got Buchanan House, dog park, picnic tables, first vote. You want to hit any of that stuff? How we get a hold of you?
Well,
I mean, you got as much time as you want. You want to blow your lunch? Let's keep going.
I'll spend a few minutes.
I don't mean blow your lunch. I mean blow your lunch date. No, I don't mean blow your lunch date.
Yeah.
I mean.
Anyway,
Did I mention I'm a comedian?
A little bit.
I'm going to put that on my Twitter feed so that I can say anything I want, and these outrageous statements won't be tarring me as a snowflake or an intolerant, racist, homophobic bigot.
But so some ward issues, and I can't believe we went, 2 hours without talking about Facer Street, which is something I talk about in every interview, it seems.
Facer Street? Oh, Roberto's Pizza. I know
Roberto's
Facer Street.
But as far as what's coming up next is the Buchanan House. There was just an article actually in the paper about a partnership the city struck with Links for Greener Learning, which is an organization that helps do community gardens. They work with kids. They teach. It started off actually teaching new Canadians, immigrants, how to have sustainable gardens and things like that. And the city's entered into a partnership this past year at Buchanan House, which is the building just across the street from Laura Secord.
Right.
And so they've put in some gardens there. They had this wonderful kids program called Eco Kids, and it was like a summer camp kind style thing, and they had workshops. I visited it about a week in, and I was blown away by how much the kids know. They would know way more about how to plant and what, the nutrients that things need, and they learned things about, how do you protect certain plants from certain bugs. You plant like onions around the outside of the garden. It was really an amazing learning experience. So just last night at council, we approved a 5-year lease with them for that area. They're going to expand. I'd like to see an actual community garden where people can go like rent plots there. So we're in talks about that. And it's really an exciting initiative that the St. Catharines City Council has done a lot for like greening initiatives. And I know that's something close to you, to your heart. And so that was one of them that is in the midst of expansion. It's really exciting in my ward. So I forget what else I put on.
Dog park.
Oh yeah, so there's
like a leash-free park.
Yeah, that's been something that's been in discussions for a while. There's a PALS community group. PALS.
Preservation of Agricultural Land
Society.
No,
it's
puppies.
It's a dog. Group. That help with the the downtown dog park and Burgoyne, and it's kind of like an advocacy group for this. And I spoke with them a little while ago, and they'd like to see one in the North End, and so we're in the process of
dog owners. Privileged white dog owners. Next thing you know, we're going to be paying for free leash-free parks for them.
But anyway, so we're trying to find a location. It needs to be. There's some issues. We got to make sure drainage is right, and there's water access and things like that.
You got a place?
Buchanan was an idea. Just behind where the community gardens is putting one in there. There's been others discussed, actually, the infamous Sunset Beach, but I don't think that's going to work out.
Oh no, Carl Vandercube would be straight up your back with that.
But I'm just saying, like, I'm interested.
Leash-free dog park. I don't got a dog.
Yeah, if we have any listeners out there who have suggestions or
we have no
would
listeners.
Like to see that, so that's something that I'm working on hopefully within the next year.
I want to touch on first vote before I get you out of here, but again, tell me how great I was at Secord. Oh, I had the story to tell. Oh, was that
okay. Go ahead.
And we joke. I was at PAC. No. The Artist Center.
A Niagara Artist Center, NAC.
PAC. I always get them confused. I was with a couple of younger musician friends of mine, and we were on the roof.
Not broofing, right?
No, it was a concert. I think.
Yeah, I heard.
The orchestra was what I can't remember what they're called now. I bought their CD. It's pretty good. So we're up there, and this not kid, a 30-year-old guy maybe.
They're the worst.
He's actually, he's got his back. Well, you're actually the most. I told you, it's a 26-year-old. You are the most populist age group on the planet right now.
Yeah,
you guys should be running shit. You guys should be them. So this kid, he's got his back to the stage, and he's standing with his buddy, looking at me. I'm looking at him, looking at the stage. I don't even know if anyone was playing it. And he says loud enough so I can hear it, "I know this guy." I'm like, "Nope. There's no way you know me." Because it's just a joke. Because I do have a public profile.
Yeah.
And it's through things like this, elections and radio shows and stuff like this. And he says, "Your name, Jim?" I'm like, sometimes. Fannon, right? Fannon, yeah, Jim Fannon, yeah. I shake his hand. I can't remember his name now. He goes, you left a mark on my heart. I'm like, I did? He says, yeah, can I tell you how? I'm like, oh, please do. Like, there's nothing more important. Like, I love people, even though I say I hate them. I've been in business a long time. People are frustrated in politics. I hate how we're so mean to each other. Women are mean to each other. Men are, we're mean to everyone. He said, yeah, you're a Green Party candidate. I go, Laura Secord. Because I did a lot of debating, but Secord was the one that was very well connected. Cross had me come in and talk to her social science class early in the day. So this kid said, you know what? We, similar to your story, and I've never been the same since, and this is how. I'm like, wow, because that's all you want to do is make a positive difference for someone, even if it's antagonistic or whatever. Like, somehow I got through to this kid. Yeah. And, maybe it was the weed thing or the whatever, but, like, I out-debate all these guys up there.
You did very well. I remember.
And it's because I know my shit. Like, I know the Green Party policy, and most of it makes sense. And if it didn't make sense, the Liberals and the Conservatives would stop adopting all our stuff, like carbon tax and, carbon fee and dividend, like not neutral, revenue neutral, stuff like that. So, and I love the kids. Like, I don't care. Like, I get in staring contests at the grocery store in line with kids. Like, I love them, especially the small ones, right? The high school ones, I have a different love for them because they're different. They need a different conversation, right? Mm. And so I really appreciate you saying that, because that for me, like, I'm just so passionate. I'm I'm 99th percentile in compassion, enthusiasm, I think it was. You should take the test. It's really good. So what's this, just before we get you out of here, first vote?
Yeah, so it's a project that kind of came out of the youth forum that the city of St. Catharines did for the first time. Just to give you some background, the city used to have a mayor's youth advisory committee. When we rejigged the committees, the mayor decided to drop the youth advisory committee and replace it with a youth forum. Something that I helped, plan, just kind of chaired the committee, and let the others do the work, but I was there. And it was a great, forum. We talked about civic engagement. We talked about the importance of getting involved in your community. And it was an amazing day. And at the end of it, one of the participants, who I knew actually he's in a local band. I don't know if you know Tuscany. Do you know Tuscany?
I don't think I've heard those guys. I might know the guys.
Yeah, but. So the guys, Nico Tripodi and there's
Tripodi?
A girl. Yeah, and Sophia DeLuca.
Okay.
Yeah,
those names sound familiar.
But anyway, so they're in a band called Tuscany. Little promotion for you guys.
Yeah, local music, Niagara Rocks.
But anyway, so Nico was at this youth forum. He's a grade 12 student, and he said, "This was an amazing day. Loved it. What next? What do I do next? How do I keep getting involved?" He's incredibly involved. He's a student trustee at the Catholic district school board. Like, he's just a very involved kid. And so I thought about it. I was like, okay, like, what next? What are we doing? And so him and there's another girl who was a speaker at the youth forum. She was a speaker. She was in grade 12 then. Now she's in poli-sci, of course, near and dear to my heart, at Brock University. And we've kind of banded together, and we're trying to create this conference, to engage grade 12 students in particular, because we came to the realization, just the three of us sitting around kind of talking like this, but without cameras, that
there's no cameras here.
What are you talking about? Grade 12 students, the next provincial election is in June of next year, and half of grade 12 students are going to be old enough to vote in that election. I never experienced
change that
that.
To 16, by the way.
But like, I've never experienced that because I have a late birthday, right? So like, I was, but
me too.
half of grade 12 students can vote in the next election, and that's the percentage that will is going to be very low, right? Like,
maybe
it's
that's why I take it into the region. All these guys that I was training, like guys
exactly.
like you, are now old enough to vote, and they remember I'm the weed guy. Yeah, we want Fannon in there.
Anyway, we're trying to create a program where we can actually speak to the grade 12. Speak to the grade 12s, show them the importance of how this affects them, how that politics in general. This is specifically on politics as opposed to the broader civic engagement conversation, but we want to create a program where it shows them the importance, gets them involved, and gets them educated. Because, you know, I remember being in grade 12, as I said, before the debate that you were at. I wasn't engaged, really, and you're not sitting at home watching political ads and researching platforms, and you know. And it's been 2 years since civics class if you're in grade 12, so you probably haven't thought about politics.
Why?
For
civics class comes
grade
up,
10.
Oh, it's only grades 10.
Grade 10.
Civics. Oh, yeah.
So this is the thing. So we're trying to kind of re-energize that in grade 12. You know, if somebody got sparked in grade 10, maybe re-energize that, or whatever the case may be, and we want to.
That sounds like a great
try and
program.
create. So it's very preliminary, like nothing's confirmed. Okay. We've had some preliminary conversations with the DSBN. You know, I'd like to involve Brock University. You know, so it's exciting.
Let me know if I can help.
Yeah,
I'm not all that affiliated with the Greens anymore. I don't have anything to do with the local association. Yeah. I'm not a member provincially or federally anymore. I watch as it goes, and still, you know, my favorite political party probably because they speak to me more as far as policy goes, and I think they're very forward thinking. But just so you know, I can come in and be unbiased. Well, not unbiased, but not affiliated.
Yeah.
But no, Mike, I really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
I know you got to get going to your lunch meeting, but
thank you. This was fun.
If there's anything I can do to help out, man, I just, you know, there's nothing more gratifying than saying to be able to say, you know, I had a hand in that, I had a part in that. It's not about the ego. It's just making this a better place for all of us. And, you know, I appreciate your generosity and your time and coming in and talking about some things that are, and letting me go off on my own tangents. That's cool. But the bottom line is, if we stop talking and we go into these camps, whether it be male and female or left and right, which are really, I think, just we got a magnifying glass on top of them right now. And before we burn up, I think we need to come together a little bit more and just realize that as humans, we're far more alike than we are different. And I think we don't look our neighbor in the eye anymore. We don't help him out when his basement floods, and, you know, maybe they do. I was always surprised when I moved to the country. Man, people, they come from miles around on horseback to pull you out of the ditch, you know, type of thing. It was a different kind of community. So my hope is just to make myself a better version of myself so that I'm able to go into the world and make the world maybe a little bit better place. And if we stop, you know, just being self-absorbed and obsessed with the other guy and why we hate them so much, which is a natural thing, I think. And I think I'm one of the few people that I feel like admits I'm trying to manage that natural hate in my heart because, you know. Anyway, I appreciate your time, and we can do it again anytime.
Yeah, I could talk all about the, you know, more about, you know, why, what you were just saying about people and the generosity of people in the country. I could tell you about my Scotland trip. Oh man, I could talk about hours for that. But I
want to keep it so that it's interesting for anybody that happens to watch. But
I appreciate this because, like, I really believe I've been trying to look at, you know, what's my why. You know, why am I here? I've been doing that a lot lately, and you know, I believe that everyone should have a voice in shaping our community, and so I'll talk to anyone, even Jim Fannon.
Jim Fannon. And just so you know, I had Petrosky on because he's most controversial, and I find some of the issues that he's going after very interesting. And then he recommended Tony Quirk, and then I see you at church every couple of weeks and whatnot, and you know, I'm having more time. It's funny because, you know, I call my lefty buddy and he blows me off because I roll with bigots, and then I call my righty buddy and I have lunch with him the next day. Yeah. And I said, bro, I'm having a hard time here. He's like, what? I said, I'm agreeing with you and your tribe more than anybody anymore. He says, that's okay. You know, you dumb lefty. I told you you'd come over and come correct. Yeah. So, it's I got a lot of time for anyone, and then you, like I said, you know, I got a lot of time for lately people that I don't agree with, and you know, I'm guilty of texting you from the gallery. Yeah. You know, before I speak, even taunting you, like, how can you support this? I campaigned on it. I'm not going to turn my back on it now. I'm like, I'm praying for you, you idiot. Like, and I'm thinking, I didn't say idiot, but I'm like, I'm praying for wisdom for you. I remember exactly what that, it's kind of a cut, you know what I mean? Like, oh, please vote this down. And if you don't, I'm just praying to God that you have that you have a little bit of wisdom, because obviously you don't have it now if you disagree with me. But yeah, I appreciate your time and everything you're doing. And if you got something that you think needs to be aired and talked about in depth, then give me a shout and we'll get her out there.
Sounds good.
Mike Britton. Appreciate it. Just tell us, how do we get a hold of you? Put your phone number or your email address and everything out there.
Well, so easily you can Google Mike Britton. I'll have a website up soon, as I was mentioning, mikebritton.ca. Very simple. I have a website now. It's awful, but hopefully I'm going to be publishing a new one within the next couple days. But on the city website, there's my number, there's my email, mbritton@stcatharines.ca. All very straightforward. And if you have any suggestions on anything you'd like to see, anything you'd like to talk to me about, just if you're looking at getting involved, I've had a few of those great conversations. So, hopefully I'll hear from all of you.
All right, Facebook Live, we're getting out of here. Thanks to Mike Britton, and thanks to you guys for watching. It'll be up on YouTube later. Peace out.